The phone rang just as I was rushing out the door to see my daughter, Clara, in the intensive care unit. It was a picture message from her husband, Daniel, not a quick update on Clara's condition, not a desperate plea for help or comfort. It was a selfie. Daniel, wearing designer sunglasses, grinning widely, a cocktail in his hand, posing on the deck of a massive yacht against a backdrop of sparkling blue ocean. He'd captioned it, "Needed a break. Cheers to better times." My daughter was fighting for her life, hooked up to machines, possibly permanently brain damaged, and her husband, the man who swore to love and cherish her, was partying. Just 1 hour later, I made a phone call that changed Daniel's life forever. "Tell me if you saw definitive proof that the person responsible for your critically ill child's welfare was celebrating their absence. Wouldn't you feel justified in unleashing every bit of leverage you had?" I didn't hesitate. Was I wrong to hit him where it hurt the most? To truly grasp the depth of this betrayal, you need the backstory on Daniel and the slow, creeping darkness he brought into Clara's life. Clara is my youngest, my light. She's a pediatric nurse, selfless, compassionate, and far too trusting. Daniel, on the other hand, is a smooth operator. When they met 5 years ago, he seemed like a dream, charming, ambitious, an investment banker climbing the corporate ladder rapidly. I was proud that my daughter had found someone who could provide the comfortable life she deserved. What I didn't see was the subtle manipulation hidden behind the expensive suits and the practiced smile. The first cracks appeared after their wedding 3 years ago. Daniel started managing all of Clara's finances, ostensibly to plan for their future, which seemed reasonable given his profession. He convinced her to sell the small condo I had helped her buy, using the profit to upgrade their car and furniture, but mostly he sunk it into an investment portfolio only he could access. Clara never questioned it. She trusted her husband completely, pouring her energy into her demanding nursing career. Meanwhile, Daniel's corporate success became his obsession. He traveled constantly, always for work, always posting glamorous pictures on social media about closing big deals, and needed R&R. Clara started looking exhausted, lonely. She'd always cover for him, saying he was stressed or that his job required it, but the light in her eyes was dimming. The truth began to surface 6 months ago. Clara called me crying, admitting that Daniel had become emotionally distant, dismissive of her career, and obsessed with appearances. He had started demanding they host lavish, showy parties, entirely bankrolled by her dwindling savings, just to impress his colleagues and Sarah's wealthy circle. He had subtly isolated her from her friends and family, insisting they were too unsophisticated for his new social standing. I tried to intervene gently, urging Clara to look at their bank accounts, to question his constant travel, but she was trapped in a cycle of denial and hope. Then came the catastrophic event that landed my daughter in the ICU. Clara works grueling 12-hour shifts. Last Friday, she called Daniel, utterly exhausted, asking him to pick her up, as their shared car was in his possession, and she felt too fatigued to even manage a taxi ride home. Daniel, according to the records I later saw, was on a private jet en route to the Caribbean for what he called a crucial client meeting. He dismissed her request, saying he was too busy, that she was being dramatic, and told her to figure it out herself. Dehydrated and running on fumes after a particularly harrowing shift, Clara tried to drive home in a loaner car from a colleague. She fell asleep briefly at the wheel. The resulting accident was horrific. She hit a median barrier, sustaining severe head trauma and internal injuries. She was rushed into emergency surgery and now lies in a coma, the doctors uncertain of the long-term prognosis. I was notified immediately. I rushed to the hospital, numb with terror. I called Daniel repeatedly, leaving desperate messages explaining the gravity of the situation. I expected him to charter the first flight back, to be beside his wife. Instead, he didn't return my calls for 12 hours. When he finally did, his voice was flat. He said he was handling things, and assured me he would fly back as soon as the client commitments allowed. That was Saturday. He didn't show up Sunday. He didn't show up Monday. He didn't even call the hospital directly. All updates went through me. He sent a single bouquet of flowers to the room, which felt like a grotesque, empty gesture. I spent 3 days glued to Clara's bedside, watching the steady beep of the monitors, feeling utterly helpless. I was exhausted, angry, and terrified. Liam's behavior was a constant, agonizing insult. I tried to convince myself he was genuinely caught in a critical business deal, but a tiny, nagging doubt persisted. So I did something I shouldn't have. I checked his public social media. His profile was private, but his recent stories weren't. And that's how, on Tuesday afternoon, while a palliative care nurse was discussing the possibility of long-term rehabilitation with me, my phone buzzed with Daniel's picture message. The one that shattered my control, the yacht, the sunglasses, the cocktail, the smug caption about needing a break. It wasn't a client meeting. It was a pleasure trip. He had abandoned his wife to likely die alone while he toasted his freedom. In that very moment, a cold, focused clarity settled over me, pushing aside the fear and the grief. This wasn't just neglect. It was malice, a celebration of my daughter's tragedy, and I knew exactly what I had to do. Daniel valued 2 things above all else: his image and his career. I had to destroy both, instantly and irrevocably. He had just handed me the ammunition, so that's the situation I was in. My daughter was barely clinging to life, and her husband was sipping martinis on a yacht, broadcasting his indifference. Before I tell you exactly what call I made an hour later, the call that brought his entire world crashing down, I want you to pause and comment below what you would have done in my shoes. Would you have prioritized Clara, letting the betrayal slide for the moment? Or would you have gone for swift, surgical revenge, knowing that exposing him might jeopardize his future, but also secure justice for your daughter? Seriously, tell me, how hard would you have hit back? The first phone call I made was to my closest friend, Michael. Michael is a senior partner at a major law firm specializing in corporate litigation, and more importantly, he knows the financial world inside out. I didn't waste time with pleasantries. I sent him the picture, the time stamp, and Daniel's location. "Michael," I said, my voice shaking with cold fury, "I need to know everything about Daniel, his job, his clients, and his legal vulnerabilities. I need to make him pay for what he's doing to Clara." Michael immediately understood the gravity. Within 45 minutes, he called me back with the information I needed. Daniel worked for one of the most image-conscious, prestigious investment banks in the city, an institution that prized absolute discretion, integrity, and client commitment. They had a zero-tolerance policy for any behavior that could be construed as reckless, morally dubious, or, heaven forbid, bad PR. This was my opening. My second call, made precisely 1 hour after receiving the yacht photo, was to the *** Senior Vice President of Human Resources at Daniel's Investment Bank. I skipped the reception and used a contact Michael provided to reach her directly. My voice, though quiet, was precise and devastating. I didn't scream or accuse. I presented facts. "My name is Allen, my last name. I am the father of Clara, my last name, an employee's spouse. I am calling to inform you that your employee, Daniel, his last name, is currently vacationing on a yacht, celebrating with cocktails, while his wife, Clara, lies in a coma in the intensive care unit following a car accident she suffered after he refused to pick her up from work. I then emailed the HRVP the picture, along with the official hospital statement confirming Clara's critical condition. I didn't ask for his termination. I didn't even demand anything. I simply provided irrefutable proof of his conduct. The corporate world moves fast when a reputation is on the line. The HRVP was initially hesitant, but the combination of the yacht photo, the ICU statement, and the potential PR disaster was a perfect storm. Within 3 hours, Daniel's direct supervisor called me, absolutely mortified. He confirmed that Daniel had told them he was on an emergency trip to visit a critically ill family member. The lie alone was grounds for termination. The SVP called me back that evening, confirming Daniel had been placed on immediate administrative leave pending a full investigation into his conduct and the truthfulness of his travel claims. But I wasn't done. The real weapon was the financial situation. Remember that investment portfolio, where Daniel had stashed Clara's condo money. I had my lawyer friend Michael investigate that account. What he found was shocking. Daniel had liquidated most of Clara's separate assets and transferred them into a joint account, but his actions surrounding her medical care now gave me the perfect legal foothold. Since Clara was incapacitated, I could petition the court for temporary emergency guardianship over her financial affairs and medical decisions, arguing Daniel's demonstrable abandonment and financial mismanagement made him unsuitable. The very next day, Michael filed the emergency motion. The yacht photo and Daniel's subsequent termination, which by now had become official. He was fired for cause due to lying about the emergency leave, served as devastating evidence of his disregard for his wife's well-being. The court granted me temporary emergency guardianship over Clara's finances and medical care almost immediately, freezing Daniel's access to all their joint funds. The fallout hit Daniel like a tidal wave. He chartered the first flight back, arriving disheveled and furious. He came straight to the hospital, not to see Clara, but to confront me. He found me sitting calmly by Clara's bedside. "You ruined me," he hissed, his face red. "I lost my job. I lost my bonus. You think you can just sabotage my life." I looked up at him, the picture of calm, and pointed to Clara, who lay motionless amidst the tubes and wires. "You ruined yourself, Daniel. You abandoned the woman you swore to protect. You celebrated her incapacitation, and now you have no job, no access to money, and legally, you have no say over your wife's life. I am in control now. You are powerless." The look on his face, the realization that his entire, carefully constructed world of status and money had evaporated in 48 hours, was more satisfying than any courtroom victory. I informed him that the locks had been changed on their apartment, and that he was legally barred from removing any of Clara's personal property. I then had hospital security escort him out. The consequences were immediate and total. Without his income, his high-status life crumbled. He couldn't pay the rent, the car payment, or his own mounting personal debts. He tried to sue me, of course, but his hands were tied. With the termination for cause and the evidence of his abandonment, his credibility was zero. The yacht photo became a legendary cautionary tale in the city's investment banking circles, destroying his reputation beyond repair. As for Clara, her recovery has been a miracle. She woke up 2 weeks after the accident. Her rehabilitation is slow, but she is mentally intact. The first thing I did, after thanking God, was tell her everything. I told her about the yacht, the betrayal, and the steps I took to protect her. She cried, heartbroken, but she also understood. We filed for divorce immediately. Because of Daniel's documented conduct and my temporary guardianship, we secured a favorable settlement. The money he had managed to hide was recovered, and she walked away free, financially stable, and, most importantly, completely free from his toxic influence. Daniel, last I heard, is living with a relative and struggling to find low-level employment. The cost of one selfie was his entire future. My daughter is now focused on her rehabilitation and slowly rediscovering her light. She no longer chases status or validates herself through a man. She realizes that the greatest wealth is family, loyalty, and health. It was a harsh, terrifying lesson, but one that saved her life and her future. So, was I wrong to use corporate leverage and legal maneuvering to destroy my son-in-law's career? No. I was a father protecting his incapacitated child from a man who saw her only as an inconvenient obstacle to his status. I fought back with the only weapons that mattered in his world, reputation and money. Like this video, if you were on my side and believe Daniel got exactly what he deserved. Subscribe for more stories of justice being served in the face of betrayal. And please, share your final thoughts on this whole mess in the comments section below. Tell me if you would have waited, or if you would have acted just as fast. I'll see you all in the next story.